and get started. So just a few housekeeping tips. You can use the chat function to type in questions. I will try and answer them as much as I can towards the end of this. We have muted you, so I'm sure if any of you have sat through Zoom meetings recently, you can understand all the back and forth. So use the chat button. If you do need to be unmuted, let us know, and we'll unmute you. But we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome today. My name is Soraya Sutherlin, and I am the Director of Preparedness for Judy. I am a certified emergency manager through the International Association of Emergency Managers. I've been doing this for about 14 years now, and the goal is really for us to help get the right information to the community and to our communities, because this is really something that affects all of us, whether it's wildfires or other types of hazards in our communities. We really all have a level of responsibility to each other to be prepared and to help our community members build a certain level of a word that we like to use all the time called resiliency, so that we don't have disastrous consequences, that we can mitigate some of the unforeseen actions that can happen. So with that being said, the reason really we put this together was as you've seen on television, if you've read a newspaper recently, we have unprecedented wildfires especially along the West Coast right now. Lots of people have been forced to evacuate. I mean, hundreds of thousands of individuals. Air quality is generally very bad right now. And really what we wanted to do is help give you the right information and give you some tangible items that you can do today to help prepare yourself and your family members. So we'll try and keep this brief, and hopefully I cover most of your questions. So what do you need to know before wildfires or any type of disaster that could potentially impact you? The first is know the risks in your area specifically. Regardless of where you live, you want to know what potentially could impact you. I cannot tell you how many times I hear with unprecedented certainty that people tell me, I never thought this could happen to me. I never thought this would happen to us. I didn't realize I was in that type of risk category. So what are the risks in your area? What are the things that could potentially impact you? And be aware of those risks. So if you live near a body of water, if you live near the ocean, if you live near wildfire dangers in the mountains, depending on where you live, there's different risks. So knowing the risks in your area is absolutely critical. The second thing we tell people to do is to sign up to receive emergency alerts. And this is critical for a few different pieces. The way you'll get notified is actually a whole toolkit that we will utilize to send notifications out to the community. And the way that we do this is by utilizing landlines, and I'll talk a little bit about landline phones here in a second, but we will call if you have a landline, if you're one of those people that still has one. We can use the reverse 911 system to do that. We also can send you emergency alerts if you sign up to receive them, because we can send you very targeted text messages and emails directly to you. And why those are critical is typically what we have found is landline phones it's very outdated. It's really difficult to get those calls very quickly out to our community. We also find that in wildfires, cell towers are disabled, or the power has been turned off. We're looking at this across the state and with the public PSPS program, where they will shut off our electrical grid to prevent wildfires. So that is one opportunity, essentially, to be able to send and receive emergency alerts. We can send them via text and email. They go through a lot faster also, so you can get them instantaneously. But if you haven't registered, you won't receive them. So receiving them is critical. There's another tool that we utilize, which is called WIA. And those are the wireless emergency alerts that you get on your phone. They pop up, you're like, I didn't register for these. And those we can send and receive, we can send them to our communities based on geographical location. But those are very limited in terms of scope. They sometimes overreach to way beyond their community members. So again, it's based on cell towers. So you can get an emergency alert and not necessarily be in that specific area. It's also important to understand what a warning is versus an order. Versus if you're in Washington, I know that they use stages, so stages 1, 2, and 3. Some states are using voluntary versus mandatory. So understanding what those connotations mean and how to use that information. In California, we use warning and we use order. If you're getting a warning, it's basically telling you, get ready, you're gonna need to leave soon. And if you need additional assistance with evacuation, so you have additional needs that might prohibit you from leaving immediately, you should start going now. If you receive an emergency order, that means get out now. So those are two very different, some differentiations, and there's not a lot of standardization across different states. So understand what your order means and what you need to do. Then we also say maintain situational awareness, and this is so critical, understanding how you're going to get out of your neighborhood. So always have two ways. You know, even tonight, if you are going to work or driving, you know, to and from the grocery store, try and take an alternate route. Figure out how to get out if one access is blocked or you're not able to get out of that area. So we always say have two ways. If you can have more, that's excellent. And then also be prepared to evacuate. As I'm sure everyone saw what happened with the National Guard airlifting 200 people out of the Creek Fire. It was one of those stories. It's just so riveting to hear, because they were, I mean, they really thought this was it. That was, they were just waiting, and they realized nobody was going to come for them. They heard the helicopters making calls saying it's too smoky, it's too windy, we can't land. And there are harrowing stories of them calling loved ones, telling them goodbye. Be prepared to evacuate. It's just so incredibly, it's so important. If you're told to go, go. Don't stay behind. Not only do you put yourself at risk, but you also put first responders at risk, and you may not have the opportunity to get out when you really need to, when it gets to that really scary moment where you actually can't leave. We talked about the emergency alerts. With the LNU complex fire up in Northern California, 100% of voice messages did not go through, but they were able to get text and email. So when we say register for emergency alerts, it's so critical. You could get that critical life-saving information on your cell phone, and that might be the only piece of information that you get. One other piece for monitoring for communications and information is also an AM/FM radio. If you don't have one, those are one of the items I always tell people to get. All right, so create an evacuation plan. And I say an evacuation plan because this is not just, you know, it's an all-encompassing plan. And what we want to talk about are maps and access. So many of us don't still have Thomas guides, but if you do, you are one of the few. But get a print map of how you're going to get out of your neighborhood and out of your community. Your cell phone likely may not work. It could die. I see way too often people on Waze. We saw this a couple years ago with wildfires. Actually, Waze was driving people into evacuated areas because roads were open. I think they've since fixed that issue, but it's hard to rely on a cell phone when you're trying to evacuate. So having printed maps of access routes in and around your neighborhoods are always a great idea. It's also great because children can use this. It's very visual, and you can talk about that with your family. I'm a huge proponent of family meetings, sitting down with your family members, sitting down with your kids, and just having conversations in a very safe place and talking about what you would do in different types of situations. We say communications. Communications is so important because it's really the lifeline. And when you look at disasters consistently across the nation, you find that this is the one point that always fails. So how are you going to communicate? Have you developed that plan? Identify an out-of-state contact, and that's so critical. I know we kind of go through the motions of filling out paperwork and they ask us for an out-of-state contact. The reason for that is specifically for emergencies. our communication systems will be inundated. They're going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be very difficult for us to call our neighbors across the street, but we will be able to call outside. And we find that often outside of our state, outside of our area, to give information. So that out-of-state contact, first of all, identify who that person is, and then talk about it with your family. It's just a funny story. My husband and I were talking about who our out-of-state contact was, and we clearly had not had that conversation because we both had two different people. So again, talk about who that is and communicate that information to them. It's also a good idea, if you are in an inundation zone that's being evacuated or under a warning, to change your voicemail. And you can put information in your voicemail outbox that lets your loved ones know, where you are. This is where I am. I've received a warning or an order. I'm evacuating now. This is who I have with me, and this is where I'm going. So that's another piece to keep in mind. You can also, on your phone settings, turn off and only do Wi-Fi calling or Wi-Fi texting or messaging. There's also apps that allow for that as well. One's is called Zello, which is, it works off of radio frequency. So that's a great app as well. You can use your social media pages to update where you are. The Red Cross has an app that does some of that stuff as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. What is your communications plan? How are you going to communicate? And how does everyone know what that plan is? Also, creating a go bag. So you need to have something that's mobile that you can carry. And I say that because so many people start fumbling in a disaster, they're trying to figure out what to take with them. And a lot of us have emergency kits that are in boxes or bins. You need to have a bag that you can grab and take with you immediately. It's so important. So having a go bag, putting a go bag together. In the next slide, we're going to kind of go through what you can put in a go bag. Also, some of your sheltering considerations. COVID has changed things a little bit. We're finding that a lot of what typically we would put individuals in shelters, there are some sheltering operations that are still happening, but because of COVID spacing issues, you may want to come up with an alternative plan. Staying with friends and family might be a better option. So identifying where are you going to go, out of the danger area, a safe place, and always keeping in mind that if you are going to a shelter, they will require you to have a mask. So have a mask with you. If you have children or family members that also are going to be with you, ensuring that they have those types of items as well. Sanitation supplies, hand sanitizer, things like that. So thinking about, maybe we're going to start planning, if we need to leave our home, we're going to go stay with friends that live in 2 cities over that may not be impacted. What does that look like? And if you are separated when you are being evacuated, making sure your family members know, we're going to go to Aunt Sue's house that lives in Thousand Oaks. That's where we're going. And if they can't get back into your neighborhood because it's been evacuated, they now know where to go if they can't get a hold of you. So that's just another layer when we talk about our plan. And then hardening of your home. So inside and out, things to consider for this are ensuring that you have proper brush clearance. So following your local fire departments, all of their rules and regulations related to clearing brush around your house. Again, creating natural fire breaks that will prevent a lot of brush from catching on fire around your home. Also ensuring that you have working smoke detectors in your house. It's unbelievable that we still have situations where we have house fires and people don't have working smoke detectors. I always say daylight savings time, though this year it might go away, but we'll see, is a great time to check your batteries and your smoke detectors. I know mine work because they go off every night while I'm cooking dinner. So checking to make sure that they work is a great way to ensure that they're functional, that they will wake you up. That is one key piece. Also, fire extinguishers, keeping them centrally located. Kitchen, again, the majority of house fires start in kitchens, having a fire extinguisher in there. And then if you have a multi-level home, having one on maybe every floor is a good idea as well. Also identifying 2 ways out of every room in your home. It's so important. And one of those things that sometimes we just don't think about until we get to that point where we actually have to come up with a plan because the doorway is blocked. So two ways out of every room in your home. And I say this all the time, if you can, close your doors at night. Even if you have to evacuate your home, it will prevent the spread. Again, fire needs oxygen. So again, limiting the access, the source is the best option for you and your family. If you have time and you can do a few things before you leave your home, making sure all of the drapes are pulled away from windows. You can move your furniture away from windows. That will also help and could potentially save your home. Again, it gets hot with these fires, and the heat can blow out the glass, can shatter the glass. And if there's nothing around it to initially ignite, it could prevent your house from burning. So just another opportunity for you to create some type of natural fire break, even if you have the ability. The other piece that I would say is, this is just a general reminder, make sure your home address is very clear and visible from the street. In the event that firefighters are looking for your home or emergency responders are coming to do anything, making sure that they know where your home is. It should not be hidden. And that's just a general reminder, not just for wildfires, but general safety. So what can you do today? So here are some really good, simple things that you can do right now. I always say inventory your home. You're gonna need this for insurance purposes, but a great way, everybody's got a smartphone. Walk through your home with the video camera turned on and start inventorying what's in your home. What does it look like? It's so difficult post-disaster to describe to an insurance agent, well, this is what the room looked like. This is what I had in the room. This is the value of the contents in the room. It is so incredibly difficult to try and figure that out on the back end. So if you can inventory your home with your phone, walk through, kind of inventory what's in it, you will prevent yourself from creating insurance fraud, number one. But also it's going to give you a better, accurate visual of what was in your home and what the value of those items are. So keep that in mind as well. Do an evacuation drill. And you can do this with your family, you can do it with yourself. Set a timer for 2 minutes and go through and figure out what you can really take with you in 2 minutes. If you had 2 minutes to get out of your house, what would you take with you? What we find is typically when, again, most stressful situations, people go, they freeze, they panic, they don't know what to do, and they end up grabbing things that they normally would not take with them. But it's a good exercise because you want to figure out, I haven't really thought, I haven't thought that through. Like, I would get my children and I'd grab my phone and I'd leave, right? Well, what are you going to take with you? And then what do you need? So figure out what you got in your 2-minute drill, and then go through and start making a list. Okay, well, maybe I didn't necessarily need, my glasses case, or I didn't need a hair dryer, or whatever it was that you grabbed. Start making that list. Okay, I probably need to figure out a better way to get my important documents out of the safe so I'm not fumbling with a key to try and get them out. I'm going to make photocopies of all of our important documents. I'm going to put the originals maybe at the bank in a safety deposit box, and I'm going to keep copies in our, our go bag or something like that. So what you want to start thinking this through. Now is the time before disaster to start having those critical conversations, because you can think clearly because you're not in that fight or flight stance. So that's really, really important to this piece of it. Also, in your go bags, as we start kind of putting these together, what you want to do is look for the 5 Ps. And I know sometimes you can see the 6 Ps, but essentially the 5 Ps: people and pets, pills and medications, right? So photos and important papers. So we start working our way down this list, right? So people, so what do they need, right? So it's always interesting. I had asked my kids to go and pack a go bag of what they felt was important to them. And it was interesting because my thought, it's kind of like when you go on vacation, you pack your kids pack their backpack, and then you go downstairs and you're like, none of this is going with us. And then you end up having to repack it for them. What you want to do is have them put together, hey, we have to leave. What's important to you? Go put that in your backpack, because what they may find important in terms of comfort items for them might be very different than what we think is important. So And then have that conversation with them. Kind of what do you want to put in your backpack? You know, my 7-year-old filled his whole backpack with stuffed animals. Not necessarily what I would have chosen, but that was what made him, that was for him, that was his comfort. So again, have that conversation and then maybe talk about, well, maybe we should add these things to your go bag. So those types of conversations. Also for pets, never exclude pets, because I always say treat them as another person. They, you need to have a separate water source, a separate supply source for them, because hungry pets are angry pets, and you never want to have to or be forced to ration food or water with your family members and your pets. So consider them as a third person, you know, another additional member of your family. And as you're creating these go bags, ensuring that you have their, you have leashes for them if they have to go to a shelter, that you have vaccination records if you have to put them in a shelter. So those are all things that you want to consider when you're thinking about your pets. That also goes for adults as well. Vaccine records. It's not something, I think, especially as adults, that we all have copies of. Might be a good time to start getting a copy of it. What have you been vaccinated for? What do you have immunities for? Again, and especially in the COVID era, we just don't know where we're going to land here in terms of what's going to be required versus not. So it's a good idea to start kind of thinking that way and getting those documents together. Also, medications. So people, we saw this with the San Diego wildfires years ago, where people had to evacuate so quickly they couldn't take their medications with them. They didn't even think to do it. And so writing down what you take and what the dosage is will be very helpful when you have to go to the pharmacy and say, I need a prescription refill for X, Y, or Z. So making a photo of it, but also if you can have additional supplies, or if you can separate them out, putting a few of those in your go bag will be very helpful. Also, family photos. So even just a couple of family photos, whatever you can put in your kit, that is important. I always say keep updated copies of your family, also your children. Everyone, we all live on these phones, right? What we need to do is print these pictures. Your phone dies. How are you going to show someone who you're looking for? This is my child. This is what they look like. My phone's dead. I have no way to describe this to them. So an updated copy or photo of your children is important. Get more than one copy, because if you go to a shelter and say, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for my child, have you seen them? They may ask to keep a copy of that photo. So multiple photos, keep photos of family members and things like that. Then important papers. So I would say one thing you can do today is go take your wallet, lay everything out on a Xerox copy machine, photocopy the top of it, then flip the cards over and photocopy the back of it. And the reason I say that is because I cannot tell you how many times and they get told to evacuate and they run out of the house. The one thing we see that they don't have are shoes. Nobody has shoes on. Nobody remembers to take their wallet or their keys. And we see this with especially house keys and car keys. People run out of their home and they don't have car keys, and then they have to run back in and get their car keys. So extra set of keys in your go bag, great way, and again, by the front door, ready to go, but also a photocopy of your credit cards and all of your documents in your wallet, because if you don't have your wallet, you can at least call the credit card company if you have the backside copied with all their phone numbers and say, I need to get new cards reissued. Also, it helps if your wallet's ever stolen to know what was in your wallet to begin with, to call the credit card companies as well. So that is something I always say, make photocopies of. Also copies front and back of your passport. And that's something good to have with you even when you're traveling. A good tip, kind of an expert tip, and I actually have my mom to credit for this, put all of your family photos, if you have print photos, photo albums, things like that, in your luggage. Right? Most of us aren't using our luggage all the time unless we're going on trips. And right now, nobody's really going anywhere. So use your suitcases and put your photo albums in there. Not only is it really mobile, you can grab it and run, and keep it kind of near the front door. And that way you can guarantee that you're going to get those family heirlooms, photos that just cannot be replaced. Anything that is so valuable that you may not use every day, put them in a suitcase close to the front door and be ready to go. And also, I think I talked about shoes. Make sure you have shoes in your go bag, in your car, by the front door. The most common question we see and hear at shelters are, I don't have my shoes. And we saw this with the Creek Fire. Actually, there were children, a lot of children 6 and under, that had no shoes on. They were in pajamas with no shoes. And they actually ended up using people loaning them socks to keep their feet warm. So again, these are simple things that we just don't necessarily think about, because again, remember, when you're in that state of evacuation, you're in fight or flight, and you don't think clearly. And then I talked about 2 ways out of every neighborhood, also 2 ways out of every room, and have those conversations with your family. So let's talk about creating your go bag. So what needs to go in it? I always say a map. You want to have a hard copy map. If you have a Thomas guide, that's amazing. If you can go buy one still, I'm not sure if you can, but if you can, that's a great piece of, especially if your phone dies. Medications. Again, if you have family members that have medical needs and other types of medications, planning for them. What do they need? A change of clothes. If you have time, get a change of clothes for your family members. Throw them in your go bag. We talked about an extra set of keys, extra set of house keys, extra set of car keys. Glasses. I mean, I can't, every year you get your eyes checked. Get your old glasses and throw them in your emergency kit. They're going to do you a lot better in there than just sitting in some pile in your house, right? So you put your old glasses in your emergency kits. First aid. There are so many wounds and injuries that can be mitigated by just cleaning them properly and putting bandages over them. So ensuring you have a first aid kit. We talked about shoes. Portable radios, AM, FM radios, they really are critical, because we can also send emergency alerts through the emergency alert system, which will go through AM, FM radio. Phone chargers, great example. Hurricane Sandy, the #1 concern was, how do I charge my phone? So an extra phone charger, throw it in your kit, you need it. Food and water, you need at least 3 days of food and water in your go bag. Especially if you're evacuating, you have no idea where you're going to end up. So, and especially with the fires in Oregon, people were sleeping in their car. Water. It's so simple. Even if you just do a few things each day, put some food, some water in that, it's just critical. Copies of ID, credit cards, passports, important documents, marriage certificates, birth certificates, social security cards. Make photocopies. If you don't or are not comfortable having them in hard copy, you can put them on a flash drive, an encrypted flash drive, and you can keep that on, keep it in your car. You can throw it in your go bag. You can have it encrypted so you don't have to worry about somebody finding it and being able to open it. To have those important documents stored. Cash in small bills. I'm going to tell you, again, we start having fires, you start losing power. Your credit card's not going to do you any good if you don't have ATM machines that work, if people don't have that point of sale transaction. Your $500, $100 bill is that's what they're going to take if all they have, if that's all you have. So keep that in mind when we talk about small bills, single bills, 1s and 5s. Flashlights. Oh, flashlights. They're they're one of a nemesis of mine, because my children love them, and they're all over. They think it's a big game. A great tip for this is grab your flashlight and put the batteries in upside down. And it will serve 2 purposes. For children that are looking for a fun game to play, they will be dead because they won't be working, right? But also, it won't drain the battery in your flashlight. If you have the batteries installed in the correct way, even if you're not using it, it will pull from that battery source. So installing them upside down is a great way to keep them, but having flashlights is another piece. I talked about the hard drive, flash drive, hard drives for your computers. If you have computers, back things up on hard drives and throw one in your emergency kit. They're really, really non-expensive now. Back up your computers, because you may not have time to grab your computer and get out of your house. We talk about family photos, comfort items. We don't negate that, because we often, especially as parents, are really focused on our children, and we sometimes forget what do we need for our survival? So what are the things that you need, comfort items? The other thing that I didn't include here, but it's always a great thing to have, extra yoga mats. Because if you end up at a shelter and you end up sleeping on a cot, a yoga mat will provide a little bit more cushioning for you. So if you have a few lying around, you can always just throw them in your car and you can use them. Sanitation supplies, so we talked about masks. Activities for children. Remember, your iPhone and your iPad likely aren't going to work. And if they do, you still want to have them turned off to allow for those who really need to get through, that they can actually get through. Again, we're already at 150 capacity on a normal day, touching our towers in terms of connectivity. So turn those devices off. Even if you have them on and aren't using them, they're still trying to connect to the network. Turn them off. And then also to create a separate bag for pets, leash, vaccine records, etc. Keep that in your go bag. Right, let's see. All right, this is really the last kind of slide that I have. And this, this is something you can do today. And you can post this at the exit. So if you have multiple doors, front door, back door, garage, if you have no time, this is what you're taking. You're getting people and pets with your go bag, with your shoes, and you're getting out. If you have 5 minutes, what you're gonna be doing, and what I would recommend doing, and I put in here location, write down the locations of where these items are. And it gives you a mental checklist to run through and say, medications, okay, this is where they are and I know where to get them. Glasses, grab them out of here. My laptop and my charger, this is where they are. This is where phones are. Anything that you might need, making a mental checklist, posting it on the wall just to grab and go. Because again, I can't even tell you, especially up in Oregon just recently, what they took with them. They aren't thinking clearly. There was a story about a family who had an hour and they felt that they had a lot of time to prepare to grab what they needed to go. And they ended up leaving all their important documents. So again, making just a list of all those things that you might need and posting them within your home. If you have 30 minutes, photo albums, portraits, stuffed animals, change of clothing for everyone. Even if you just have underwear, toothbrush, and a pair of shoes, it can make the world of a difference if you're in an evacuation center. Other things that just to keep in mind, always, especially you're in a fire zone area, park your vehicle facing outwards. It will prevent you from trying to have to back out of a driveway. Face it going outwards, especially if it's smoky and embers are blowing, you can get out quickly. Always have gas in your car. I'm gonna exit out of here. Let's see. Always have gas in your car because it will, let's see, I'm gonna stop the share. There we go. All right. Always have gas in your car. And the reason I say that is because especially if you're starting to evacuate, you could be in lines for hours trying to get out of your community. So having gas in your car, that's also a really great reminder, not just for wildfires, but also for earthquakes, because you won't be able to get gas, and especially if you have to get out of the area. So keep that also in mind. I think that's most of everything I wanted to cover. I know that's a lot of information. I would say the most important thing that you can do is have these conversations with your family, have the conversations with your children, make sure everyone is aware of how they're going to get out of your neighborhood, where you're going to meet if they can't communicate, not only in your neighborhood, but outside your neighborhood. Who is the point of contact you're all going to connect to? Having those safe conversations now before a disaster happens creates an environment where your children feel comfortable asking you questions in a very non-scary way. And you can respond to them in a very calm manner that will allow for them to feel empowered to help solve their solution, to solve the problem. And then give them tasks on how we can help fix this, how can help us create that go bag, encourage them, include them in that process, because it makes them feel that they're empowered to solve the solution and they're part of that process. So now they feel that they're contributing in a positive way to their overall family safety. So with that, I will go, I'm gonna jump into the Q&A and chat and see if I can answer some of those questions really quickly. Yes, we are recording this and we will be able to send those out, I believe. Do you need to keep duplicates of the go bag for each person? So creating a go bag, I would say have one at a minimum. If you have an opportunity to create multiples, that's fantastic. You know, it just depends on if you can split things in 2 different locations, that's also helpful as well. I know realistically, it's hard for people just to create one go bag. So if you can create more than one, that's fantastic. You just have to make sure that you update those bags frequently. You don't want to end up out at a shelter or evacuating your house with your child, you know, clothes that are too small, that are 2 years too small. So I can't tell you how many times we see that as well. So I would say 1 go bag for each person should be sufficient. All right, let's see. Okay. Gabriel, so I am going to, there is actually a document I can send you. The question was for house vents where embers enter, what do you recommend? So there's actually a document that talks about this specifically if you're in an area that is being consumed by fire, what to do, that will talk about what you should do with your air vents. So we will make sure we follow up with that individual. All right, are there any other questions, comments? I'm not sure if okay. How big should the bag be? You should be able to carry it. I would say if it's too large that you can't carry it, that's kind of defeating the purpose. So backpacks are fantastic because you can grab them, you can put them on your back. Things that roll are also really useful as well. Like I talked about the luggage. So again, you can grab a piece of luggage and throw it in. Let's see. The biggest mistake people make. All right, so one of the questions was, what is the biggest mistake people make? I would say the biggest mistake people are waiting to get notified and be told to leave. A lot of individuals wait and they say, I never got the alert to leave, so I didn't leave. I will tell you this right now, if you feel unsafe, leave. You don't need to be told to leave. And again, if you're being told to leave, get out. Don't wait. Don't try and save your home. Now it's not that time to be a hero. Items can be replaced, people cannot. So they wait too long until they're trapped. Again, we've seen the fires are now burning faster and hotter than they've ever burned before, and they're creating their own source of fire weather. So don't take chances. If you're told to leave, leave. Yes, great. You can keep go bags in your car. The only thing I would caution about keeping, one of the questions was, is it good to keep a go bag in the car? So you can keep your go bag in the car. I would just recommend that if you live in a climate that's extremely cold or extremely hot, just to ensure that those items, if you are keeping food and water, that you're rotating through them regularly. I know water, especially if you have it in plastic containers or even in those packs, sometimes the interior part of those can start to degrade and can cause them to leak toxic chemicals. So just keep that in mind. I would also say don't put crayons in your car. If you're one of those parents that have had the unfortunate experience of dealing with that, colored pencils are much better for children. All right, let's see. I'm looking through the questions. Hold on one second. So another question is how much water per person per day and for how many days? So we always say a minimum of 3 days. The federal standard that we normally take into account is 1 gallon per person per day. Again, that includes everything. That includes cooking, drinking, bathing. I don't know how much of bathing we're going to be doing in disasters, but keeping that in mind. Also, having a separate water source for first aid is important as well. You don't want to be using your drinking water to be cleaning wounds and things like that. So identifying a separate water source specifically for first aid, a couple extra water bottles, whatever it may be to clean wounds and things like that, separate them out, write first aid on them, stick them in with the first aid, wrap them around. That's a great option as well. If we have customized kits by zip code, I think that is something we're working on. I can't definitively say yes or no to that, but I know that that's something we are working on. And if they can have different items depending on where we live. I think that's something that we're working on, and I don't want to speak out of line. So we will get back to you with a response to that question. Yes, so we can send a PDF over or a walkthrough. We also can share this presentation with you as well, if that's helpful, to kind of walk through the general steps and preparedness on what to do. What got me into this line of work and what am I most excited about the future? Well, how I started this adventure is, I feel like we're all kind of branched out, but that's a really interesting question. So I feel like I have a few starts to it, but more than anything, I took a class in college, an emergency management class, and started working as an intern, and that kind of got me into it. But I think the seeds were planted much earlier when I was a Girl Scout and learning through all the different tasks that we would do as a Girl Scout, working through my Silver Award and Gold Award that kind of got me into this field. So was there a single moment that defined my career? I'm not 100% sure there was a single moment, other than I am very much connected to everything that happened in 2001, and how it really was a huge factor in what happened with my career. So I'll leave it at that. Any other questions? What am I excited about the future? We need to get we need to be better at helping our communities survive and plan and get connected. And there is so much opportunity for us to just have those conversations with our community members, you know, checking in with your neighbors, talking to friends and family, even just saying, we need to get out of the this idea of not talking about preparedness, because what we find is once people start planning, you know, building their kit, and they start talking about it, you start to have all these closet preppers come out and say, oh my gosh, I'm doing that too. And we need to normalize that. So have these conversations. It is so crucial. Your life literally depends on it. So we need to start having more of a public presence and conversations around preparedness. The best emergency evacuation notice system. So, I mean, there's so many out there. I would say the best system is the one that you receive. And I would say that one piece I would recommend you doing, create what you consider, identify a trusted network. And when I say that is, in a disaster, it's hard for us to comprehend sometimes what that emergency alert is, because we cannot contextually put it into the setting that we're currently in. So an example of that in Joplin with the tornadoes, they actually found people, they had a 5-minute warning to get to a shelter, and they found people on their cell phones trying to validate that the emergency alert that they received was accurate, because they just couldn't believe what was happening. So when I say trusted networks, understand when you receive an alert from whoever it is, that's what it means. It means leave, that it's time to go. You don't need to be, we call this milling, where you're constantly trying to verify. People become very social in disasters. It's very interesting. They start to talk to their neighbors. They got the alert, and the first thing they do is they call their neighbor. Did you get this alert? Are you sure? Is it true? What should we do? It happens, and this is just human nature. So that's something that I would, you need to have a trusted network. What is a trusted, reliable source? Okay, let's see. So okay, the question is the emergency alert system has failed in your community during a wildfire. So why don't we talk offline about that? I think that's more of a very targeted question for alerting. So we will talk offline about that, but thank you for that question. Okay. So water is very heavy. Yes, it is. Any suggestions for planning for family that can't carry their share? So, you know, it's kind of, you can get rollers, things that roll are much easier to take with you versus things that you have to carry on your back. You know, backpacks that roll, bins that roll, I mean, luggage that rolls, I mean, that's another option as well. I would say, you know, start with the basics and then supplement based on your family needs. So if all you can get is water in there, then that's what you get. I mean, you can live without food, but you can't live without water. So you just have to take that into consideration, but also think about alternate places you can store water. Where else can you put it? You know, I never say put everything in one central location, spread it out. Because if you lose access to one area, you may not, and that's where your emergency kit is, then you're really in trouble. So split them up, put them in different locations so that if you can't get to one, you're able to get to the other. All right, let's see. So we can send you a concise list of items to put in a go bag. We can do that for you. That was another question. All right, well, I think I'm going to end the presentation. Let's see, we will happily send this out, this presentation out to everyone. If you have questions or something came up that you didn't ask, completely fine, just email us. We're happy to get that response back to you and get an answer for you. But we thank you for your time. We really hope this was helpful. Again, you guys are already taking a first step in preparedness because you're here and you're engaged and you're asking the hard conversations, which is so important. So thank you for your time. And with that, I will end. Have a wonderful rest of the day.